welcome to Special Investigations. Today's episode, Los Alamos, hosted by Jaime Maussan.
Between 1945 and 1948, in the state of New Mexico, 2 spacecraft crashed in remote areas near Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory, the only place on Earth producing atomic bombs at the time.
I think is one of the most amazing stories ever because it connects to the atomic bomb situation, which I think was the stimulus for a lot of the crashes in New Mexico.
According to new unsealed documents from the FBI, the crash landings might have been caused by interference, generated by powerful microwave radars installed to protect the Manhattan Project from aerial attacks. This information was discovered in the Memos of Guy Hotel, a field agent assigned to the investigation, and sent to Edgar J. Hoover, director of the FBI. In this investigation, we will present evidence and testimonies of the supposed crash of 2 crafts of unknown origin in remote areas of New Mexico. The first in the town of San Antonio on August 16, 1945, and the second in the town of Aztec on March 25, 1948. However, systematically and learning from its mistakes, the government discredited each of these cases. The FBI and the military suppressed all information related to the fall of both objects. Multiple branches from the federal government, together with the military, formed a task force dedicated exclusively to suppressing all information and witnesses in New Mexico. Several of the recently declassified documents about the fall of these objects were considered state secrets, and all evidence recovered at the site mysteriously disappeared.
I'm a physicist. We believe in things that are testable, reproducible, and falsifiable. Now the tide has turned, because traditionally, scientists would giggle and laugh talking about flying saucers and UFOs. The burden of proof was on the believers. Prove it. Give me the evidence. Show me. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the government and the military. Russia, the United States, and China, all 3 countries are experimenting with hypersonic vehicles, but that's a big question mark. The other possibility is that, who knows, maybe they are evidence of visitation.
This place is known as Trinity Site, baptized by Robert Oppenheimer, the creator of the atomic bomb, to commemorate the explosion of the very first nuclear device on Earth. A plaque located very close to the road cites a phrase from the Hindu scripture Bhagavad Gita, "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." During our investigation, we found a common denominator. In both cases, San Antonio and Aztec, the crashes occurred within a few miles of Los Alamos Laboratory. According to historical records, there are numerous reports of the presence of strange objects in the skies above New Mexico, especially above the most secret base in 1945. Robert Oppenheimer, in correspondence to Albert Einstein, complained of their constant presence. Still, at the same time, he understood that the laboratory was the only place in the world practicing nuclear fission.
Enrico Fermi was this very famous American physicist who worked on the atom bomb at Los Alamos. And in May of 1950, he and his friends, scientists, were saying, "Where is everybody?" There's a quote, he says, "Where is everybody? Why aren't we seeing any signs of alien life?" Well, at the same time he was saying that, the security personnel at the base were sending a memo to Washington saying, "We've got all these green fireballs and flying saucers around here." But the scientists could not connect that phenomenon with extraterrestrials, most of them. Couldn't make that leap, that there was possibly, that it could be an alien presence of some kind.
These visits took place weeks after the completion of the Manhattan Project, which made it obvious that the sightings were directly related to the nuclear test. According to Guy Hotel's memorandum to Edgar Hoover, he suggested that the crash landings might have been caused by a series of newly developed microwave radars. These giant radars were designed to protect the site from possible attacks and were eventually discontinued in 1957 because of the possible danger posed to aviation and its operators. Still, according to the unsealed FBI memos, the installation of these giant devices could have been the reason why so many foreign objects were attracted and eventually crashed near the laboratory. In this episode, we will focus on the two least known investigations because of their remote location and small population, especially what happened in the town of San Antonio, New Mexico. The crash happened 1 month after the first nuclear detonation, which preceded the town of Aztec by 3 years. An event that has been kept secret for almost 8 decades until today. It is very unusual to find witnesses of such rare phenomena after so many years. But the perseverance and years of research on the case eventually paid off. They both are eager to tell the world their extraordinary story.
The witnesses were there when the object arrived. The witnesses were children. So those were not ordinary little kids who play, marbles. They were serious. They had a job to do for their parents. They see the thing arriving. The thing has hit the tower, which is on their land. The tower controls communication from the north end of White Sands. Okay, it's not just any tower. White Sands loses the communication tower. They ask a pilot to check the tower. The pilot reports on the tower being bent. He sees the 2 little kids, and he sees a UFO. I mean, the thing kept its integrity. The kids called it an avocado. It was not a disc. It was not a flying saucer. The kids didn't make that up.
Journalist Paola Harris was the first to investigate the case and to come to the conclusion that it was an authentic event. We had the opportunity to speak with her at the historic Owl Bar and Cafe in San Antonio, near Los Alamos. It was the same place where all those who participated in the Manhattan Project, the scientists that developed the first atomic bomb, met for cocktails and dinner to discuss among themselves the incidents of the day. A perfect setting to talk about an investigation she researched for many years.
Well, in about 2004, I was living in Italy, and I read a story by Ben Moffat for the newspaper here in San Antonio. And I read the story, it was on internet, about 2 little Mexican boys that had witnessed a crash with beings. I called for 1 solid year and made friends with him so he would trust me, and he began telling me about the story. Then he asked me to speak to Jose, who was in California, and I verified the story because both men had the very same story.
On August 16, 1945, exactly a month after the first nuclear test at Trinity Site near Los Alamos, a ship of highly unusual characteristics crash-landed in the rugged mountains near San Antonio. 2 young boys looking for a missing cow and riding their horses, Remy Baca and Jose Padilla, witnessed the unusual event. They saw a craft hit the side of a mountain and continue its downward trajectory, creating deep canals on the sand and followed by a loud explosion. They assumed it was a downed airplane and followed the smoke in the distance until they reached the top of a hill. They pulled out their binoculars and observed an unknown craft and small beings moaning and moving around the damaged ship. Jose Padilla, one of the eyewitnesses, took us to the location where the crash happened and described the unusual event.
It came around like that and hit the dirt right there, and he made a big groove. And it came down, and this right here was like a bunch of sand, an arroyo, and a bunch of sand, and it just buried itself right in here, and it stood up this way. And the hole was right over here. That's how come we could see from up above. Weeds come out, except for here. Nothing grows over here. We came out on the horses through there. When you seen that thing smoking over here, On the bottom over here, there was a bunch of that chamizo, you know, chamizo, mesquite, that was burning, where it skeeted, you know, metal, something you skeeted. It was burning, smoking. When we came down here, we climbed that hill over. That's when we started seeing over here.
According to Jose Padilla's testimony, he and Remy continued looking at the ship for some time from the hill. They were mesmerized by what they were witnessing. He recalls that the ship was damaged with an approximately 10-foot hole on its side. He remembers that there was a lot of commotion inside the ship.
The creatures were, you know, like a fire ant, hormiga, like that, except that gray. And they had long arms, 4 fingers, no ears, and the eyes were teardrop. And it looked like they were naked, but it looked like they had a uniform. The ears were black, you know, but long, like a football, you know, but no ears. But I noticed the arms, they were longer than ours. And I noticed that the 4 fingers only.
One of the most outstanding aspects of the case is that the children had an uninterrupted and clear vision of the strange beings through the damage in the ship's hull. Jose recalls that the commotion increased by the minute, signaling that something was very wrong.
3 of them were running, you could see it through that hole, running back and forth, off and on, you know. That's why I say, you know, that they were hurt, they were injured. But we were here for about an hour and a half, almost an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours, you know. They remind me of a rabbit when we used to shoot the rabbits, they cry, you know. They remind me of something like that. That's why I decided to go down there, you know, to help him. But Remy just wouldn't let me, you know. He was scared. Like I said, you know, I told him before, maybe if I would have gone up there, I wouldn't be here today, you know. I'd be somewhere else, you know.
The children rushed back to the ranch. Jose told his father, Faustino Padilla, a ranger at a nearby national park, the amazing story. Faustino contacted his friend Eddie Apodaca, a state policeman, and asked him to accompany them to the accident scene. What happened next was shocking. After the break, we will travel to Gig Harbor in the state of Washington to talk to Remy Baca, the other witness of this extraordinary case. We arrived at Gig Harbor, very close to Tacoma in the state of Washington, in search of Remy Baca, the second witness that, together with Jose Padilla, on August 16, 1945, witnessed an extraordinary event. These young children may have met with the unknown in the mountains near the town of San Antonio.
We hear this big, loud sound, but it's not there. It's a couple of canyons on away. And you see this flash, you know, and I says, what the hell is that? Jose says, I hope they're not testing another bomb, you know. And so, well, maybe a plane must have gotten down, you know, and somebody might need some help. So that was our intention. We made our way there, and we got down the hill, and the smoke and the rocks were hot, and we saw this gouge in the only way I can describe it, in the dirt, like a big blade had gone by. Only this big blade was maybe like 50 feet long, you know, like a grater, only big and maybe like a foot deep. The rocks are hard on your feet, you know, and it's hot out there. You've got, you know, high temperature, and so we went over this ledge and we saw some smoke coming. So now we have a direction, and then we start watching debris, pieces of stuff on the ground. And so I'm looking at that. So I look at this one piece out of the corner of my eye. I saw this thing glitter and flicker. And so I reached, that was under a rock, so I reached under the rock and got it, you know. And so when I put it in my hand, it kind of like unfolded. That scared the hell out of me. So, you know, it's live, you know. And so I said, well, I don't know. So I think I'll take it. So I took it and I put it in my jacket pocket. We continued on.
Remy Baca agrees with Padilla with the general description of the ship and its occupants. He remembers the tough terrain, the low height, and its different physiognomy.
We got maybe 100 yards from close to it, as close as we could get, because there's a lot of smoke and it's hot. The rocks are hot, so it kind of plays heck with your feet. Sat there and looked, and so Jose looked through his binoculars, passed them on to me, and we're looking at this, and it looks like an avocado. It's got a hole in the side of it, and I'm looking, and yeah, there's some little critters walking back and forth, but not really walking, they're sliding. They're like, they slide back and forth. And so he looks at them, and I'm looking at them, and then we hear, at least I start hearing some voices, as such, the only thing I could compare it was like a jackrabbit when a jackrabbit is hurt. Real high. A baby when it's really mad. That high shrill. That was what I was hearing. And we're looking through the binoculars and seeing these guys and trying to figure out what in the world they are, because they're very different from us. Their eyes were kind of like bigger. And their faces were kind of like different. Couldn't see, much more than that. They moved back and forth.
Remy Baca claims that while he was observing the ship, he fell ill. He first experienced a strong headache, followed by what he called strange and unexplained futuristic visions.
I'm getting these pictures of tall buildings. Now, there ain't no tall building in San Antonio nor anywhere that I'd ever been. At 7 years of age, I ain't been nowhere. I don't understand this. I had no idea what in the world, and I still don't have no idea what that was. That, and Jose wants to go over there and look. I told him, look, I'll tell you what, you go look, I'm going back to the ranch.
Remy and Jose left the mountains and returned to Padilla's ranch. After informing Faustino Padilla, a park ranger, he decided to call his friend Eddie Apodaca, a state trooper. He told him the extraordinary story, and Apodaca hesitantly agreed to join them at the ranch 2 days later.
Faustino had got Eddie Apodaca to come over to his house, and it was in about noon. And Eddie Apodaca wanted us to show him and Faustino where this took place. So we went there. And when we got there, we're on this ledge, and it's probably maybe like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So we kept on walking, and sure enough, there it is. And so Faustino, with better judgment, says, well, let's go down there and see. You stay here, we're gonna go check it out, Had a lot of dust over it, debris, probably winds or whatever, I don't know. They went inside, and then they came out, and they were different people when they came out, So it appeared to them bigger inside than what the actual size was. And that was incomprehensible. I had no, at that age, I had no idea what they meant.
A few days later, Remy Baca witnessed a fascinating conversation. Just before breakfast, his startled neighbor asked for his father's advice. He confessed that the night before, he had seen 2 strange beings near his well. He described in detail the exact same beings that he saw together with Jose days earlier.
I heard the knock on the door, and there he was. He says, I hate to bother you, but I heard this noise, and I looked outside the window, and there's this light right by the well. And then, the next thing I know, there's these 2 ugly creatures that are standing right in front of me. And well, he says, I grabbed my gun, and these creatures went through the wall. He says, you won't believe it, Alejandro. They went right through the wall.
Eddie Apodaca notified his superiors, initiating the intervention of the military, which sent a brigade 4 days later, on August 20th, 1945.
There's a vehicle, an army vehicle sitting there, military vehicle. The soldier came in, and they talked back and forth and so forth. And finally, how long is it going to take? And I said, oh, heck, we shouldn't be there any more than 2 weeks, maybe even less than that. But we need to kind of keep things quiet, And this is okay. So that was essentially the guy left. He shook our hands. He was a real nice guy. And so he took off. It wasn't very much after that they started bringing equipment, road grader, and they brought the tractor trailer in there, and they're building this rack on top of the truck out of metal.
Jose Padilla decided to go up the hill every day and watch the military personnel working from the distance for several days. His goal was to wait for the right moment to collect a souvenir.
And the final day, he come and got me, and he says, says, I've been watching these guys, and I think they're just about done, Jose and I talked about, about a souvenir, and so we waited until everybody left.
On the afternoon of August 20th, 1945, the military completed the task and loaded the ship onto a transport and covered it with a tarp. The servicemen departed the site, followed by the two miners. The convoy stopped at the Owl Bar and Cafe for a meal, leaving the cargo unattended. The clear oversight initiated an event that seems to be straight out of a science fiction story.
And so they did what they always did, except this time they drove that truck out the gate, the brand new gate that they made, and they locked it, they put a lock on it, and they went up and they parked it alongside the road. The dirt road, just what you've got, and they parked it alongside there so it'll be out of the way. And they got in their Jeeps and they went down to the Owl Bar and Cafe. And so we'd see them there, dancing and drinking beer. They were creatures of habit. They did that night, and that is when we went up on the trailer. Initially, we untied the tarp, and I pulled it off, and I stepped into that hole and stayed there on the edge of it, holding the. And Jose went in, further into the craft, and started jerking on that, but he couldn't get it off. It was strong, and he jerked it, and he took it down. Great. So now we've got a piece. He handed it to me, and I took it, held onto it, looked at it, and we got out of there. He wrapped it up in his pocket, in his jacket, and we went home.
The souvenir that Padilla and Baca extracted would become a long-life problem for the children. The military must have had a detailed inventory of the ship, and it wasn't long before they detected the missing hardware. They dispatched several elements to the Padilla Ranch and accused Jose and his family of theft of government property. They searched their home and threatened to come back unless they returned the missing piece. Jose was worried about her family and decided that Remy should keep the metal piece from there on. He accepted the responsibility and hid it for over 70 years. Remy first placed the fragment under his father's workshop and later inside a hole underneath a large cactus for over a decade. Even though the local cholla cacti are known to last over a century, the plant dried up while it housed the object. In the next segment, and for the first time on television, Remy Baca will allow us to examine the foreign object that he and Padilla extracted from a panel inside an alleged spaceship. Further studies performed by scientists in England revealed that the structure is composed of alloys unavailable during the Second World War. The study also revealed the presence of carbon nanotubes, an advanced technology that could be from a distant planet. Remy Baca sent the piece for analysis to a laboratory in England. The results surprised the researchers.
When you are looking at this piece, and you're looking at this, then we've got a circuit, an electrical circuit that they had in there.
The scientists found what appeared to be metal integrated circuits within the piece, maybe part of a large computer, possibly making the craft a thinking machine. It is clear that we were dealing with an unknown technology. These designs are thinner than hair, a technology unimaginable in 1945.
So how did that craft fly? When we did not see anywhere where they had any engine, okay, there was no motors, there was no levers, there was no gauges. We know that. We were in there. There was no place where they would have taken them off. Okay, if there had been something that had been a hole in there, something, there was nothing like that. So how do they drive that? What kind of a mechanism? And so some of the opinions are that these suits had circuits in them, and they interfaced with this, and this interfaced with the ship.
Further tests of the strange alloy that conforms the hull of the ship were surprising. A small piece retrieved from the crash site was exposed to intense fire. The results were very unusual.
How do we know that this material was just inside and the outside was not made of that same material? Well, we know because of this. This was found embedded in a cholla cactus there in the last 10 years. This is an outside piece, and we believe it's an outside piece because they put a torch and they ran it up to 2,000 degrees. And what did you get? It went through there and it melted out on the other side.
Shortly after our interview with Remy Baca, he passed away. His family in Washington sent the piece back to Padilla in New Mexico. We decided to return to San Antonio to talk to Padilla, not only because he promised to share a piece of the object to perform further analysis, but to hear further details about the crash.
I'm going to cut this little piece off of here and give it to you so that you can have it test to let the people know, that I found something is not from this world. But there's a lot of people that think that I lie. Even my oldest sister thought that it was a lie, that it wasn't possible that I took this thing out of there. I experienced it, not her. But when this came out there, they took an inventory and loaded that object on the trailer. Someone went over and took a part off. When they got over to the White Sands, they took another inventory list. A part was missing. That's when they sent soldiers up there to check and see what. And they came over to the ranch. That's when I didn't get scared. I never been scared of nobody. That's where I took this part out of it from underneath the floor on the ranch and took it over to Remy's house.
They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And this event, for them, because there was no television, there was no movies, there was no talk of it in 1945, they didn't even know what UFOs were. Basically, is for two little kids, it's purity, it's innocence. They're telling the truth because they have nothing like today with the science fiction they compare it to. They have nothing to compare it to. What's totally amazing is that one of the little kids went inside the craft and wanted a souvenir, and they got it. and even though the military tried to take the souvenir back, because part of the inventory was missing, he was able to keep that souvenir for all these years. What he called a souvenir, but that's normal. I mean, a little boy wants, I want a piece of this. I want a souvenir. So I think it's a very fascinating story, Jaime, and I'm really, really happy that we were able to do it. And what needs to happen now is the analysis, which you're doing and we're doing on the piece, the analysis on the soil. And the problem is that we waited too long. Don Schmidt talks about this. We wait too long, the people die, so we don't have any more witnesses. We can't because it's so long ago. But I think that we're very lucky to speak to Jose Padilla while he's still here. So I think the way I feel as a researcher, and you asked me that, is that this is history. We just recorded history.
The sample provided by Jose Padilla was sent to an expert at a well-known laboratory for further analysis. The scientist corroborated the presence of an alloy known today as duraluminum, used frequently in the manufacturing of modern aircraft. However, it was unknown in August of 1945, further reinforcing the theory that the alleged spaceship retrieved by the military may have been the source of new technology.
Many alloy types with different characteristics are currently used to prevent corrosion and avoid rust. However, none of these alloys currently used have any organic content. Steel itself is an alloy with carbon. That's quite common. Duraluminum is perfectly known for its components, and in no documented case contains any organic component. I'm not aware of any organic material currently used on alloys, especially in duraluminum.
The studies obtained by the university and the laboratory in England demonstrate conclusively the presence of intricate electronic circuits and carbon-based nanotubes. This discovery could be interpreted as organic, which is not yet available today, much less possible during the Second World War. The technology available for creating living computers, capable of flying an aircraft, is still a fantasy. But the possibility of using reverse engineering would be an extraordinary advance for humanity. Continuing with our investigation in New Mexico, we will travel to the top of a mountain in the desert near the town of Aztec. According to multiple witnesses, another ship measuring 100 feet slowly landed and ignited a fire. Local workers were able to pry open the craft, discovering at least a dozen crew members with features very different from those of humans, and apparently 4 of them were dead. These are the ruins of the town of Aztec. The name was originally given to the area by the Spanish conquistadors, who were initially confused and thought that the adobe structures were Aztecs. However, these ruins are part of the Anasazi culture of the so-called Pueblo civilization. It was near this town when the night of Wednesday, March 25, 1948, Patrolman Manuel Sandoval followed a strange light that moved slowly from the town of Cuba to the mountains in the outskirts of Aztec. The object seemed to slow down and landed gently on a clearing, igniting the brush and starting a small fire. Upon his arrival at the peak's top, Officer Sandoval encountered more than a dozen witnesses surrounding a dull metal craft, measuring approximately 100 feet wide by 20 feet in height. They were mostly workers camped in the area while extracting natural gas from underground reservoirs, and many of them were carrying tools and photographic cameras. The workers were first distracted by the small fire, which they put off, and were surprised to find such a large aircraft, which they assumed was a new type from the Air Force. They decided to use their heavy tools to pry it open to reach the cockpit and help the crew. And to everyone's surprise, they could distinguish the presence of several small bodies and strange lights inside. 4 of them were in the main cabin, and with features that did not appear to be human. The Aztec case came under public scrutiny thanks to Frank Scully, an investigator journalist, who published the book Behind the Flying Saucers in September 1950. The book was an overnight success, selling over 50,000 copies in a few weeks. However, the United States government started a smear campaign against Scully that eroded the public trust.
Frank Scully was a journalist. He was an entertainment journalist, and he wrote in a very breezy, entertaining style. But underneath, I began to see that everything in his book had a factual base. In 1950, this book sold 50,000 copies. That should have ended the secrecy about flying saucers. To his dying day, Scully said that this was true. He never backed down from it. And now Scott Ramsey has proved him to be a prophet. Somebody, we don't know who, some government agency began to do a hatchet job on Frank Scully and his sources until he was branded a hoaxer or a dupe.
Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, writers of the book, The Aztec Incident, have researched the subject for decades and found eyewitnesses and direct evidence that links the U.S. military not only in the retrieval of the craft, but in the suppression of information and intimidation of first-hand testimonies. According to a declassified document of the United States Air Force, dated September 30th, 1950, an individual identified as Clyde was arrested in a government sting operation involving the CIA, the FBI, and the military, while he tried to purchase black and white photographs of the Aztec ship that landed in New Mexico for $1,500 in a bar in Denver. On October 2nd, 1950, Clyde was questioned by the Army officers, where he confessed being a reporter for the Baltimore Sun, according to the report signed by the district Army commander.
They're not denying that the Aztec UFO incident happened at all. As a matter of fact, they're reacting saying, my God, if there's pictures of it floating around, we need to get the pictures back. We know from several good witnesses that black and white photos were taken of the crash. Frank Scully tells it in his book, and Frank Scully's wife confirms that she held pictures of the UFO crash landing, whatever we want to call it, that happened out in Hart Canyon Road. She held them in her hand. Another researcher who's now deceased backs that story up.
Although most eyewitnesses to the strange phenomenon have already died, The Ramseys managed to find some of them and convince them to share their recollection of that night on tape. One of the testimonies was that of Doug Noland, a gas worker, 19 years old in 1948. In these unreleased audio recording from 2003, Noland shared his experience shortly before he died.
It was burning. That's why we went up there. The trees were burning. It was buried. It was sitting in the dirt. This up here is where the door come down, though. It opened from right at the top out and just folded down.
The witnesses could not board the craft. The sheriff and the military stopped them from entering and took control of the situation. According to Noland, some of the witnesses were arrested and told not to talk about it under threats of revoking their gas licenses.
There was about 3 of them all showed up together. Oh, they come in a staff car. I guess they came in from Durango. I don't know where they come in from. They come in on the road. Told us to get away from that thing. Said you're not allowed up here.
The small group of witnesses, mostly area residents and workers, made good money from the oil and gas contracts and decided not to talk about the craft, fearing retaliation from the federal government. But thanks to the work of 25 years of Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, it is now possible to know more of the details surrounding this fascinating phenomena.
It came from that area down there after it had been in Cuba that night, Cuba, New Mexico. It basically followed the terrain of Highway 44, which is valleys and canyons. It came up through Largo Valley, or Largo Canyon, the Largo Basin. It came across what is now basically Highway 173 or State Route 173. Went over the Archuleta Ranch. Appeared to be in trouble at that point. To quote Valentine Archuleta, it fluttered like a leaf. It bounced off the canyon wall of the mesa and went on a trajectory of northeast. The witnesses I talked to said that it was at an angle and that all the silt was pushed up, kind of like you'd imagine if you took your hand and ran it through sand. And it wasn't covered at all, but right around the one rim, it was pretty packed underneath it. But yeah, this is where it laid. Not much grows here anymore.
Curiously, the brush and grass in the plateau where the ship landed never grew again, a similar phenomena to that of San Antonio. Perhaps the energy emanating from these objects is harmful, making the ground beneath barren. According to Scott Ramsey, what followed was a monumental task, a secret operation by the Army to transport a 100-foot-long ship through the desert, avoiding as many witnesses as possible by using low-traffic roads. In his book, The Aztec Incident, he describes an operation in which the Army was able to disassemble such a large ship without any apparent joints.
3 separate sections of the actual disc, and the cabin section is reported came out as another individual piece, at least 4 pieces. The outer rim of the craft came in 3 pieces, reportedly then put and cradled on the flatbed trucks straight up to the hill to where the concrete slab is, and then taken out through Largo Canyon down to Liebrook. And once they got to Liebrook, they had open road. This was updated in 2007. The plaque was first put here in 2000, kind of near the event date. It was put here to recognize when people come out to the crash site that they are at the right spot, and we tell a brief story on it about what happened, to the best of our knowledge.
On March 15th, 16th, and 17th, 1950, 3 days of continued mass sightings were reported in the skies of New Mexico, exactly 2 years after the anniversary of the Aztec case. These strange events happened just a few miles away from Aztec in the town of Farmington. According to the Farmington Daily News, thousands watch as hundreds of unidentified flying objects appeared in formation around the town for 3 days in a row.
From the northwest direction, hundreds of UFOs came over Farmington, flying right over downtown here and going in that direction and then banking off to the left heading toward the east. This sighting lasted for about 41 minutes. They were all silvery discs except for one lead flying saucer that seemed to lead the pack. It was bright red, as though it was glowing bright red from heat. And maybe they were coming over and show their comrades support, or maybe it was just another sighting altogether.
Through years of research to complete his book, Scott Ramsey was able to prove that the secret radar bases mentioned in the unsealed memos from the FBI did exist and were so secret that there are few historical references to their operation. We traveled deep into the mountains of New Mexico and found the first of these bases, known as El Vado, which operated until 1957.
El Vado Dam, or the entire El Vado Lake, was built prior to Los Alamos. They needed electricity at Los Alamos to do all the things they were doing: fusion, fission, splitting atoms, refining the plutonium. And there's a GE hydroelectric generator just below that building that makes the power. And then the power was transmitted down these lines to Los Alamos.
The second radar base is known as Tierra Amarilla, located several miles through a deserted road that leads to the top of a mountain and operated between 1945 and 1957. The base was eventually closed because of the development of new radar technology that was not harmful to its operators. How many people work here?
About 100. They worked 3 shifts. I think it grew to about 200 when they were announcing that they were closing it and going with the Dew-line radar system.
These radars were experimental and very powerful, correct?
Well, it was powerful enough that even though this was restricted airspace for private aircraft, or commercial for that matter, there were manuals written on how to quickly shut the radar down if a private aircraft wandered into this airspace. These were here for one main purpose, and that was to protect Los Alamos. So we were protecting these bases against espionage, spy planes, or bomber raids by the Soviets. They did, in their quarterly journals, report UFOs that they had picked up on the radar, which I found interesting. But those reports did not go to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Those reports went right up here to Colorado to the Ent Air Force Base. They had a group up there, AISS, Air Intelligence Service Squadron. That was a very secretive investigative group for the United States Air Force. But that's where the UFO reports from this base would go directly up to AISS.
It is important to note that unlike San Antonio, the ship at Aztec did not crash, but instead descended to land slowly on a clearing, igniting a small fire. Our investigation strongly suggests that the crafts were possibly affected by microwave radars installed by the military for the protection of Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory. The witnesses at both locations agree that the physiognomy of the crew was not similar to those of humans. They were described as short and with 4 fingers. Although the facts presented are subject to debate, the evidence, witnesses, and the investigation of those directly involved demonstrate the similarity referred to in the unsealed communication between FBI Field Agent Guy Hotel and the director of the agency, Edgar J. Hoover. The ships that fell in San Antonio and Aztec were the 2 least known crashes of unidentified objects near Los Alamos Nuclear Laboratory, the site of the first atomic test, and a common denominator of the presence of flying objects in the area for the last 7 decades. Some say that the detonation of July 16, 1945, sent a clear message to the farthest reaches of the universe, announcing that the harmless human race had succeeded in the forging of a tool capable of destroying everything around them.